Work that's their own stimulation. Work that's their own stimulation.
Welcome to Work Matters, where we explore what leaders can do to make work more productive, valuable, meaningful, and impactful. I am your host, Thomas Bertels.
In this episode of our podcast, I'm talking with Tina Robinson about the need to personalize engagement. Tina is the founder of leadership development and coaching firm WorkJoy. She's a recognized HR thought leader with 25 years of experience at the intersection of humans, technology, and work. Earlier in her career, she held corporate roles with leading organizations such as PwC, Toyota, and SAP. She's also a former adjunct professor at Loyola Marymount University and a sought-after and highly rated speaker at international conferences. In this conversation, Tina and I explore why leaders should care about engagement, why most engagement programs don't work, why engagement needs to be personalized, and how leaders can learn how to have these types of conversations. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and if you do, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share it with at least one other person you think would benefit from this episode. Welcome to the Work Matters podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. Happy Monday.
Happy Monday to you. So, really excited about this conversation. We're going to talk about making engagement personal. Why should leaders care about engagement?
Why should leaders care about engagement? That is a great question. Engagement, there are so many studies out there. If any leader listening doesn't know that engagement is important and you're asking, what is engagement? Engagement is our personal relationship with work. It's what makes us more willing to exert effort. It's our emotional connection to work. It's our social connection to work. When we are more engaged, research has shown that we are more willing to put in the extra work. We are less likely to take sick days. We are less likely to demonstrate low performance. As a business, organizations with high levels of engagement tend to see higher revenue, better customer service, overall better results. And so engagement is a terrific input to support organizations achieving desired outcomes.
A lot of companies look at engagement. Many companies have an engagement program of some sort. Why do most of those engagement programs don't seem to work?
Great question. And I was actually just looking at the latest results from Gallup. Gallup, as many of your listeners know, has been around for a very long time. They are all about numbers, all about data, all about analytics, all about surveys. And they regularly survey employees globally to look into engagement. In the first quarter of 2024, engagement is actually at its lowest level, according to surveys, since 2013. So we are at an 11-year low, according to Gallup surveys, which means that about 30% of surveyed employees report feeling engaged, which means that 70% are feeling some kind of disengagement, which I think is pretty awful. And it means that there's a lot that organizations are leaving on the table. So you had asked, why are we not doing better? And this is some data that sort of validates that we're not doing better. You and I had a really interesting conversation about how many organizations see engagement as an output rather than an input. Because the ultimate outputs of an organization are revenue, sales, profit, all those things. Organizations exist to make money. We might want to believe that there's some altruism, that some organizations feel like they exist to do better things in the world. Ultimately, if you're a for-profit organization, you exist to make money. And engagement is an input into that, and it will help you achieve the desired outcomes. So I think first and foremost, many organizations don't do well with engagement if they see it as an output rather than what it really is, which is an input. Second, and this is also something you and I have talked about, is that many organizations forget that engagement is really personal, that engagement is a very individualized thing. And what engages me at work doesn't necessarily engage you at work. So engagement describes my personal involvement with work, my personal feelings about the work that I do and how it makes me feel. And yet, most organizations have these broad sweeping programs to tackle engagement. Let's do things for everybody. Let's have a summer picnic for everybody. Let's give everybody water bottles. Let's reorganize our seating charts and let's do broad things for everybody. And I do think, based on 25 years of being in the space of humans at work, that I think that's ultimately what organizations get wrong.
So these broad-based programs don't work. What's a better approach?
A better approach is to teach leaders how to have personal conversations with their employees about what engages them. What do you want from work? What do you like about work? What do you not like about work? What's working for you at work? We have those conversations during the recruiting process. We have those conversations when we are interviewing somebody. We ask them, what do you want from work? What do you like about this role? What are you looking for? What makes you happy? What motivates you? And then we offer all these things to try to match the needs and the desires of the candidate that we're wooing. And then once we bring them in, once all the paperwork is signed, we don't ask those questions again. Oftentimes, those are called stay conversations. We don't ask people what it's going to take to keep them there. So we make a lot of assumptions that what enticed them to the organization still holds true, and what made them say yes to the organization is still appealing. And then leaders are shocked when employees part ways, oftentimes for obstacles that can absolutely be overcome.
Listening to the employee, right, figuring out what motivates them is like one piece. But overall, so if you step back, right, that can't be the entire job of the leader, right? How would you describe the task for the leader relative to making engagement personal? What's the key challenge?
That's a really good point. And I have long said this. I coach leaders at all levels. I do leadership development programming for clients. I teach leaders through training and skill building. So I work with leaders and poke at them from all different sides. And I have told them consistently, it is not your job to engage an employee. It is your job to create an environment that supports conversations about engagement. So you're absolutely right. It requires dialogue. It is a two-way conversation. I think many employees, for whatever reasons, don't feel comfortable having conversations about what engages them. They don't know how to have conversations about what engages them. I think many employees ultimately don't know what they want or don't know how to articulate it. They just have a feeling of what they don't want. And so it's really hard for them to have the conversations, and it's an awkward conversation to have, to initiate it during a one-on-one with their boss or during a performance review. I know I've spent 25 years doing this work, a lot of that in-house. And even for me, the conversations with my leaders has often been very awkward. When I start advocating for what I want, what I need, what I desire from work.
What I find really intriguing about what you're talking about is that it really is a different leadership role. It's like a little bit like a broker, right? That brokers like alignment between what the employees want and need from work and what the organization wants and needs from the employee, right? And it looks where are opportunities to make this like a win-win for everybody. Do I understand this right? Is this like how you're looking at this?
I love that. I love the idea of leader as broker. I think that's a really good description. And a model that I often use is very much what you just described is we all go into organizations, we all go into a work situation with needs, desires, and wants. We want certain things financially. We want certain things in a in an organization, in a boss. We want to align with a certain vision, a certain purpose. We want a certain workplace. We want to be remote. We want to be on site. We want to be hybrid. We want certain levels of flexibility. We want certain social aspects at work. So we go into work situations with things that we want to get out of them. And again, when we're interviewing, we're pretty clear about what we want and need. On the other side, organizations want, need, and desire. Otherwise, they wouldn't be hiring. They wouldn't be seeking candidates. They want people with certain skills, certain expertise, certain experience, certain attitudes. They need people with those qualities to fill certain roles. So both sides have a need. Now, I also am willing, in exchange for having my needs met by an organization, I'm willing to offer certain things. I'm willing to offer that expertise and experience and skills and attitude. Now, what I'm hoping in the interview process is that my offer aligns with what the organization needs. And organizations are hoping that what they're willing to offer will let you be remote 3 days a week. This is our workplace. We have a cappuccino machine. We offer this salary. Look at our benefits. This is the kind of boss you'll have. We hope that the organization hopes that what they're offering matches what the individual needs and wants. So you're right. Engagement happens at that meeting point. Now, just like in human relationships, it's never perfect. And it's what we're aiming for are most of our needs being met, most of our offer being valued on both sides.
So I'm sold, right? You sold me on this. I totally get it, right? Engagement is a problem. These broad-based programs don't really address the unique needs that everybody has. But you also said those are difficult conversations to have. So how can leaders learn how to have those types of conversations?
Great question. And I'm going to tweak what you opened with, which is I don't know if engagement is a problem. I think engagement is a challenge. Can you have a successful business with a very disengaged employee population? You and I have seen that. You and I both worked for organizations where we've been disengaged, where many around us have been disengaged, and the organization does just fine. So engagement is just one of the inputs. The way that I see it is if you have a lot of employees who are not engaged, who are feeling disengaged, it just makes it harder to achieve your desired outputs. It doesn't make it impossible, but why not give your organization a fighting chance? And to make it a little bit easier, if you are an organization that encourages and supports engagement, then you're also going to you're just going to attract a different kind of employee. You're going to retain people for the right reasons. You're not going to have people who are sticking with you because they have nowhere else to go. Because the longer you let somebody be disengaged, that the more likely it is that your highest performers, the ones who have places to go, are going to part ways. So I don't think it's I think many organizations see it as a challenge. I think not all of them are willing to do anything about it. So speaking to the ones that do want to do something, this is about teaching your leaders how to have those conversations and teaching your employees how to have them. So this is just coaching of employees and leaders and rewarding those behaviors, building those conversations into performance reviews, holding leaders accountable for having them, celebrating when employees have them, and just creating safe spaces for that magic to happen. But it is a skill set that employees and leaders have to learn. I remember I was working with a client and talking about this in theory and putting the pictures out there and talking about the alignment. And it's a very simple model. And it was 90 minutes into a session, into a workshop with a team of maybe 7 or 8 managers total. It was after 90 minutes that the light bulbs finally started to go off of, oh, okay. So I need to talk to my employees about what they want from work. And of course, I'm sitting there beating my head going, oh my gosh, yes, why don't you see this? But you and I do this work every single day. And so it does take some patience. It does take some dedicated coaching, training, skill building, and accountability in order to instill this new mindset into your people.
Yeah, I love that. One of the ideas that I'm a big fan is to look at work as a product. And right, in that sense, the employee becomes the customer of the work and got to address certain needs that people have. And in that framework, I guess the manager would be the designer of work. And it's like maybe under that guise, what are some of the levers that leaders can pull to create like a better work product, a more personalized work product that engages people? What comes to mind?
I really like that. And I love your operations background, and I love how you apply that operations thinking to humans without dehumanizing it. So I think you have a lovely balance there. There's a concept called psychological safety, which I'm sure so many listeners to your podcast, at least they recognize the term. It is this idea of employees feeling safe at work, feeling safe to ask questions, to speak up, to take risks, to challenge, to disagree, to fail, to screw up, and then learn from that failure. And organizations have realized that psychological safety is one of the biggest contributors to high performance. And the research has been out there, I think, since the 1970s for several decades. Now, forgive me for not quoting the exact number, but it's been around for a long time. So psychological safety is the secret sauce. Now, how do leaders do that? That's the hard thing. It's the same question I get when leaders say, "Can you teach me how to build trust?" And I really wish I had spent the last 25 years creating a pill to do that, to go, here is your trust pill. Psychological safety, like trust, is built in every interaction with your employees. I have had leaders who are phenomenal at this, who every single time I sit down with them, I feel like they're tapping into what makes you happy at work, what motivates you, how can I be a broker on behalf of the organization to keep you here, what's changing for you. And leaders also being great readers of their people. And I've worked for leaders who are the opposite of that, who I'm almost shocked that they don't have those conversations with me. So what can leaders do? I think it's first and foremost, recognizing when you don't know how to do this and asking for help and saying, I need to work with a trainer. I need to work with a coach. I want to learn how to do this. I want to have these conversations. I'm not good at them, which I think takes huge moral courage because many leaders, especially less experienced leaders, don't want to admit that they don't know how to do something. And you and I have both seen that most leaders need the help.
So the other thought that comes to mind is, right, I think there's this famous quote, right? You can't manage what you cannot measure. And actually, people have started to measure employee engagement. You mentioned the Gallup survey, right? That's a very popular tool. What's your take on these surveys? Are they helpful? Are they getting at the right issues? Could this be just the only input leaders need to work on engagement?
It's a great question, and you and I had a fun conversation about this. My big frustrations is when leaders put the time and effort into measuring engagement. They create a homegrown engagement survey. They partner with wonderful survey providers out there, and I have some strategic partnerships with a few of them. They do all of that. They take the time, they push out the surveys, they rally people, they have contests to get people to respond. They get the surveys, and then they do nothing with the data. Nothing. They maybe report out, but there's no follow-up. And I would almost rather organizations not survey versus do that, because you have destroyed some trust. You have made a big withdrawal from your goodwill bank account with those employees who took the time, who put the effort into responding to the survey honestly. And then you're basically saying, thank you, interesting, we're not going to do anything with it. But we now have some information. So if you're going to do an engagement survey, commit to doing something with the results. Ask fewer things and do more with what you learn. Look for correlations. What are the engagement scores we're seeing leader by leader? Are we noticing patterns? Are we noticing that leaders who have worked with a coach, who have gone to training, who are demonstrating other qualities, what are their levels of engagement? Engagement surveys can give you all sorts of really good insights, but ultimately, the real metrics you're looking at are ones that more directly contribute to revenue. Things like turnover, because we know turnover costs money. Turnover of high performers, turnover in the first 3 months, first 6 months, first 1 year, because then a lot of your recruiting costs have been for nothing. You barely onboarded this person and then they're out of there. Retention of high performers, your ability to recruit critical roles. Those, I think, are a little bit more tied to your ultimate outputs, which are revenue, profit, sales. So I think engagement is a contributor to that, and you can find opportunities to get out ahead of some of those other retention, turnover, recruiting metrics.
I think one of the downsides of these engagement surveys is that they average things out, right? We're taking all these inputs and we come up with an average score in each of these different categories. But what I love about your approach is that you say that might give you like a good general indicator, but to really figure out what to do, you really got to engage with people like at the unit size of one, right? You got to individualize it, you got to personalize it, because we all want different things from work. Do I hear that right?
Exactly. Engagement surveys are great, but you're right. They're looking at the masses. And not everyone's going to answer honestly. When I was working in-house at an organization, we had a small enough team that even though it was anonymous, there was still this feeling of people might know it's me. We're saying that. And so you are requiring people to be courageous and to be willing to take a risk. And again, there's a lot that goes on with surveys. I take surveys with a grain of salt. I think that they can be a valuable tool in addition to. So I think organizations that think they're doing something with engagement by only surveying, it's a little bit of a panacea. If you had a choice, if you only had to do one of them, should I invest in my leaders in teaching them how to have engagement conversations versus should I invest in having engagement surveys organization wide? I would absolutely advise on the former.
Leaders have plenty of things already on their plate. Now we just added personalized one-on-one conversations to figure out what engages people for good reasons. But beyond like having those conversations, what's like general recommendations would you give to leaders that are facing low levels of engagement in their organization? What are some of the actions that they can take that allow them to move forward?
Yeah, that's a great question. Step back from it. So first and foremost, step back. Look at the larger picture. Could your behaviors as a leader be a contributor? Absolutely. Is it only because of you? No. So it's put everything into context. We are living in incredibly anxiety-inducing times. And I think no matter where you are globally, you are feeling this because it's global. This feeling of uncertainty, this feeling of unrest, this feeling of lack, this feeling of fear that is permeating for everything from our natural environment, our climate, our economic environment, our political environment, our sociological environment. It's all around us. And so employees bring that to the workplace. And so it's not all about you. You are an influencer. So take responsibility for your actions, but then look for other ways that, again, to go back to a term you're using, you can be a broker. See yourself as a liaison between how can you represent the organization with this employee? And don't be afraid to ask your employee, hey, what's going on? How can I be a broker between what you need from work right now and what we're able to offer you? I know we haven't really had this conversation since you started. Let's talk about that. So depersonalize it, yet take responsibility, find the courage to have these conversations and get the help and support you need as a leader, because it can feel really lonely and frustrating and scary.
One of the themes that we've been exploring is also to what extent low levels of engagement, low levels of productivity, it's not just a flaw or a bug in the system, but they're actually a feature. They're a result of how we structured work. Particularly, maybe we fragmented work into many small bits and bobs where people oftentimes lose sight of what's the larger purpose of why we're doing this. And that obviously also has a detrimental impact on whether people feel accountable for the work product. If I just do a small piece, I'm not going to take ownership for the whole thing. Right. So to what extent do you think those underlying root causes of low levels of engagement are systemic versus actually something you can tweak at the individual level, for example, by giving somebody more interesting work? Any thoughts on that? What have you seen with your clients?
Gosh, that is such a great question. That's so juicy. That's a whole other podcast. Is I am such a system thinker. I love, love, love that you were looking at the whole. I'm thinking about that. And I'm going back to something that Gallup has talked about. So Gallup also publishes materials related to strengths. So what used to be known as StrengthsFinder is now Clifton Strengths, which is owned by Gallup. So they've done a ton of research looking into the relationship between employees using their skills and overall levels of engagement. And so a great example of what you're talking about is organizations that structure work in ways that do not allow employees to use their skills, to use their strengths, and put employees into roles that require them to just keep doing what they've proven to be good at. Now, I am good at many things, but I'm good at many things that aren't necessarily my strengths or what bring me joy or what light me up or what motivate me. I'm good at them because I have to be good at them in order to succeed at work. And I remember I was working early in my career at PricewaterhouseCoopers, so many years ago. And I like to say I was at PricewaterhouseCoopers when you actually spelled out all the words rather than just use 3 letters. So I'm totally aging myself. But I remember I had done several projects related to the same kind of technology, and I was leading the change management team. And I went to my resource manager and I said, please let me do something else. I am motivated by challenge. I am motivated by learning something new. I am motivated. That's why I got into consulting, because I want to explore different kinds of projects. And she said, but we make money on you because you're good at this. Interesting. Okay. Now, that's how the organization was structured. It's how they made money, but it went right in the face of what motivated me personally. So I think you're absolutely right. I don't have an easy answer for that. I think that's very much worthy of a larger conversation, but it's absolutely something leaders should pay attention to is systemically, how am I as a leader, or how is our function or department organizing work, and how does that align or misalign with what personally motivates the people on my team.
So, like, another angle to look at this, right? Because leaders are also just people. And I'm also curious, right, looking at like typical middle managers, right? Those are the folks that oftentimes have these conversations with people. And I wonder to what extent they themselves are engaged and motivated, and how they can flip it around and actually have those conversations with their leader, right? With the more senior leaders. Do you think that's also like a skill set that middle managers need to develop, not just like right, managing people downwards, but also looking at their own needs and bringing that to the forefront of the agenda?
Oh, that's a great question. And I love middle managers, and they're the filling in the sandwich. They're responsible for work getting done in organizations. And so just to align on how you and I define it, they're the managers of managers. So oftentimes at the director level, which means they are directly leading people who are leading others. And you and I have both seen that this is the level in an organization where things can get very clogged up. Because if we promote somebody from an individual contributor to a manager of people, and we don't hold them accountable for learning how to be a good people manager, when we then promote them to be a manager of managers, we are perpetuating and extending a problem. And now there's a ripple effect because they don't know how to hold the managers that report to them. They don't know how to guide them because they were never taught themselves. And then that can start to cascade up and down through the organization. So it's such a critical role to get right. And yeah, I've had a lot of leaders say to me, Tina, I appreciate this. I want to do what's right for my people, but I'm so frustrated because my managers don't do this with me. And I say, yeah, you're right. And it's up to you. You ask for what you want from your leaders to start role modeling how to do that as an employee. And be part of the change that you want to see in this organization. But recognize that your VPs and senior VPs may not. And you and I have seen this, is that there's a lot of effort in trying to get frontline managers, supervisors, directors to do all this good stuff around engagement. But when we crawl up the levels of the pyramid, we don't always see that at the top.
Listen, Tina, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed you taking the time and sharing your views on personalizing engagement. If people want to learn more about you and your work, where should they go?
Thank you. This has been so much fun. I love this topic, and I feel like I'm a one-woman champion for making engagement personal at work through teaching people how to have better conversations. And I admire the work that you do and look forward to continuing to align. You can find me on LinkedIn, Tina Schust Robinson. Schust is my middle name. You can also find me through WorkJoy. So the email address is tina@workjoycoaching.com or online workjoycoaching.com. And yeah, would love to stay in touch and welcome anybody reaching out to have a consultation about how you can help your leaders make engagement personal.
Wonderful. And you also were so kind to share one of your resources with us. So we're going to put the link to that one pager into the show notes so people can check that out at their own leisure. But yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a really insightful conversation. Thank you so much, Tina.
My absolute pleasure. Have a great day.
We hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you did, be sure to subscribe, like, share, or comment. Until next time, let's make work matter.